All right, the time being 7 PM, quorum of the planning board being present, I call this meeting to order. I'll let anyone in the audience who's here for agenda item G, which is 770 Main Street, agenda item H and I, which are the two 1600 Shawshene Street hearings, and the agenda item K, which is 1695 Shawshene Street. All of those hearings will be continued. We'll do nothing with those this evening, so if you're here for those, you can leave and not be afraid of missing anything. All right, with that, I'll return to agenda item A, approval of minutes from December 18th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the planning board meeting minutes of our December 18th, 2023 meeting.
I have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Moving on to agenda item B, B1, committee reports. Any of the members have any committee reports they wish to make at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item B2, town planners report. Ms. Lauder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item of note, there are no new scheduled hearings for our February 26th meeting, so we will be working through some of the continued hearings, including the ones that you mentioned this evening. Second item of note, that I have held office hours at both the library and the senior center in the month of January, and will continue to do so for the last Tuesday and Thursday respectively of February, March, and April. And the goal of these office hours, again, is to help educate residents on the planning process, how zoning works, current projects in an informal conversational setting, and residents are encouraged to ask general and project-specific questions. Specific dates and times for those meetings are on the town website. Third item, I want to note that the final winter market for the Tewksbury Community Market will be held at the Senior Center on Thursday, February 29th from 4 to 7 p.m. Most of the market will feature over 25 food and artisan vendors inside the Senior Center with food trucks outside for hot and ready meals. Next item, we had 2 business openings since our last meeting, the first being at 2254 Main Street, the Pull-Up, the former Bluebird Cafe or Tewksbury House of Pizza, depending on when you move to town. The Pull-Up had its grand opening on Tuesday, February 6th, and I encourage residents to check it out, especially if you're a fan of empanadas. And this is really a great success story of a food truck to brick and mortar, and we're really glad that Robin Brown chose Tewksbury to be his restaurant's home. Another item here, 553 Main Street, the former Skybox. Also, since our last meeting, Brothers Sports Grill opened for business on January 30th, and they are going to have a ribbon cutting this Friday at 11 a.m. at the restaurant. Next item, the annual town election will be held on Saturday, April 6th, and just a couple of dates of note leading up to that. This Friday, February 16th, is the deadline for candidates to turn in their nomination papers with the requisite 50 signatures to the town clerk's office by 5 p.m. On Thursday, March 28th, there will be a candidate forum held here at Town Hall at 5:30, where all the candidates running for various boards will be asked a series of questions by the moderator, Robert Hayes, who's also our community outreach librarian. Next item of note, the Greater Lowell Vision Zero Public Program and Survey. NIMCOG, or the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, is hosting a series of virtual public forums, first being Tuesday, February 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. During the event, presentations on the region's high injury crashes and high-risk networks will be made. Vision Zero plans to utilize a data-driven approach, emphasize equity, and present a shift from traditional transportation planning. The new strategy emphasizes a more human-centered approach that acknowledges the humans make mistakes, and that we can make our roads safer by improving design and planning for human error. To participate in the virtual meeting, you can register in advance, and the links for registration are at nimcog.org/announcements, and there's also a link to a pre-forum survey. And another item for NIMCOG is tomorrow there is supposed to be hosting their first at-home in Greater Lowell event, which has now been rescheduled for Tuesday, March 12th due to the impending snow. How much snow we're going to get, use your imagination. We seem to be changing it by the hour. And last but not least, for the board's information, in preparation for the town meeting warrant closing on Friday, I have attached the text and the map currently under review with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and the Attorney General's Office. Following the initial submittal, staff were approached by property owners within the proposed district to add a discretionary provision to increase maximum height. And it was modeled after similar existing provisions in the underlying district. And, as a zoning article, this will be submitted under the planning board's sponsorship. So I wanted to get, a final look before it goes into the warrant. At this point, I had hoped to have feedback from the state so that we could really put any final touches on it, but that has not been able to be a reality at this point. So the text you have in front of you is the text that was approved back in November by both the planning board and the select board. And I anticipate some minor changes once I get the feedback from HLC and the AG's office. But those can be made in the form of amendments to the warrant article. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Alex, paragraph C, I'm hoping, under other development regulations, section C, paragraph 3, the affordable dwelling units in the MBTA community, et cetera, shall not be lower than 80% area median income. If applicant chooses to provide affordable dwelling units at lower than 80% AMI and increases the affordable percentage of affordable dwelling units to 15%, they can reduce their open space to 10%. Is that state-driven language, or is that something that we put in?
That was something that the select board had asked as an additional provision to incentivize lower area median income thresholds. It is something that I am not entirely sure that the state will accept, as this has been driven by housing production, not by affordable housing production necessarily. So I'm not entirely sure whether that's going to pass their muster, but it's something that was requested to put in in the event that they would entertain it.
Okay, because one of the things that sticks out from, I think, one of our first, or maybe our very first NIMCOG meeting was that these types of developments, they consider them to be medium density, but the verbiage in here says we're designating this as high density. And then this paragraph that I just referenced is now saying we can reduce our open space down to 10%. So it seems like we're driving towards something that we're going to give a lot of leeway to some builders to really make this a dense, tall, limited open space sort of development. And I'm just curious, I just want to know how much of this is being driven by the state versus how much of this the town should have their own say, and whether we bring it to the Board of Selectmen or select persons, select board, sorry. I don't reference them often enough, so I don't know how many freebies you get there. But before this does go onto the warrant, my concern is this was presented to the town as medium density, and obviously the feedback immediately was, we don't want to turn this into another Cambridge, another Somerville with lots of very tall, high-density units with no space in between the buildings, et cetera. But it seems like, again, it all depends on what actually gets built there, and it's all driven by the developer. But it seems like we're opening the door to maybe have this get a little more than what the town was buying into when they were supporting this.
Sure, so this does not increase the density per acre. This is something that allows a builder more flexibility with how they want to situate the buildings on the parcel. So if they were to offer the deeper affordability, they wouldn't be held to the 20% open space. They could go down to 10%, but that may mean lower rise, more spread out, and actually not speaking to taller, but actually wider, lower rise. And again, this was something that was requested during the select board review process back in November before we submitted. And again, because the language from the state hasn't been driven by affordability, I don't know that it's going to be allowed, even though it is discretionary and the by right uses are still intact. So we're going to have to see what that feedback looks like, and certainly depending on the feedback, and then when we have the public hearing for this in March, that can be something that can be discussed then too.
Okay, and then just so we don't have a whole crowd of people here at our next meeting wanting to change this, if they wanted to amend this, that would be done at town meeting, I would assume?
So
Or is that too late because it's already been blessed by the state?
not necessarily. So the thing is, any changes that we were to make at this point, we would not be able to get state feedback before town meeting. They basically have said, they need a 90-day window, and we're not going to get another 90-day window before May 8th. So my thought would be that if folks do want to amend the article, I would encourage those comments to come during the public hearing process so that it does not happen on town meeting floor, because once we get to town meeting, it is much more difficult to be able to know whether it's going to jive with the rest of the bylaw, whether it's going to have unintended consequences elsewhere, or if it's going to run afoul of the state law we're trying to come into compliance with. So I would rather have the ability to research and at least speak with attorneys and consultants before town meeting if there are changes proposed. But of course, folks are welcome to do whatever they like at town meeting, but for this one, I would ask that people are a little more careful and thoughtful about how and when changes are proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, I was just curious, I think in a previous meeting, one of my colleagues had asked about that the state may be considering state hospital land for one of these types of developments. And I was wondering if we ever had any feedback from our state delegation.
Sure, so the reference to that is from the state housing bond bill that's currently being considered by the House, and there are no specific mentions to state hospital land. The only language that is in that bill is that the House is the governor's office is looking at excess state land statewide, made no mention specifically of any particular parcels or towns that they're looking at, but they're doing an inventory of all of their land at this point, and that's the extent that it's been discussed, and we haven't had any further clarification on that.
Would one be like mutually exclusive of the other, I guess would be my question.
Right, so for the MBTA Communities District, it expressly disallows including public land, whether it's town-owned, state-owned, or federally owned, from being considered for the district. So even if we were to relocate and say, oh, look at all this acreage over here, it's expressly not allowed in the law, unfortunately. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
The only other thing I guess I'd say on that, because you mentioned the town meeting, but it seems like this is going to be a little bit similar to some of the ones we've had recently, which, when folks are, if they are considering, though, I would hope they don't try to amend it, because obviously there's been a lot of work and approval and whatnot that goes into it, that when they're making their plans for those kind of things, that they're not planning to try to do it at town meeting and not earlier if they could, because it could run into one of those things where, again, it's happened recently where it becomes something that they have to disallow the attempt to amend it at town meeting, because it's either unintended consequences that you can't figure out, or it runs afoul of the requirements. And it'd be easier to get that out of the way rather than trying to spring it on town meeting and then trying to sort it out and then having it disallowed without even being sure whether or not it would fly anyways.
Exactly. It's a very fine balance between meeting the minimum requirements and in any event where someone proposes to make it even slightly more strict, it probably changes the density per acre. It could just make the whole thing not work. So I certainly welcome the discussion and certainly welcome it at our hearing that we're going to have, the one that's going to happen at the Finance Committee, and the discussion that's likely going to take place at the Select Board all before town meeting, that if there are any questions, clarifications, points to consider for an amendment, I would really encourage folks to reach out to our office ahead of time or catch me after a meeting or in between a hearing, and I can give you my contact information, just because it is going to be really complicated in the least condescending way, that it's really, really hard to make sure that we're going to pass something at town meeting that is going to meet the mandate, because if we modify it on town meeting floor and it passes but it doesn't work, well, then we have to do it again anyway. So it's a very fine balancing act, and I would ask that anybody who has questions or would like to modify it to please reach out ahead of time.
Okay, all right, moving on to agenda item C.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm
Mr.
is
Chairman,
there another-
if I could just get an up-down vote on this going to the warrant, as it is, understanding that there are
sure.
likely going to be amendments later,
Okay.
depending on the state's feedback.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Take a motion to put this article on the warrant. Do you need me to read the article name?
Nope, it's fine. And then we already have a second, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Just one question, is the state, what's their, the 90-day turnaround? Are they holding to that? Are they coming in earlier? Are they behind? Like,
So-
I would think that if this is something they want, maybe they could allocate some resources so that we can do our job and give them what they want.
Yeah.
Rather than just get dial tones and voicemails and
Yeah.
bounce back emails.
Yeah, so I initially submitted it, I received confirmation that it was in fact received and was complete. And we are among some of the first communities, at least in this area of towns I'm in contact with, to submit. The only other town that submitted ahead of us and has received their feedback is Wilmington, and they did get it back on like the 90th day with constructive and helpful feedback at the least. So it's similar, it seems, to the Attorney General's review when we submit our town meeting warrant and vote record to the Attorney General's office with all the new things that were passed, and then they send back that feedback and say approved with changes, or, you have to go back to the drawing board on this. And it sounds like they didn't have any major fatal errors, but it sounds like they did take every ounce of the 90 days and were due for feedback by the end of the month, so I hope they at least respect that.
Okay, and if we have follow-up, does that like move us to the front of the line with, knowing when our town meeting date is and so forth?
Yeah, so we did have to submit all of that information at the go, saying what town meeting date you're targeting, what you're targeting for your public hearing with your planning board and so on. And I don't know what that process looks like for follow-up questions, but I have to imagine that that'll all be detailed in the letter once I get it. And when I do get that letter, I'll share that information with you folks.
Okay, my concern with the state is that we get sort of, basically just sort of frozen, that we're not allowed to have any late input or make any last minute revisions because the state won't turn it around in time, and then it's going to town meeting. So, I think everybody that has a voice about this article is likely going to be one of the most impactful articles, hopefully in a beneficial way, for the next decade in Tewksbury. I really hope that we hear from the residents of Tewksbury, get all of their input, and that the state then takes that into account with whatever final regulations, stipulations, and other requirements they have in this article.
Yeah, I expect that if it is formatted similarly to the feedback that we get from the Attorney General's office, that it should be very precise, actionable amendments to take. And based on my discussion with the Wilmington planner, it shouldn't leave too much to the imagination. But there are certainly folks at EOHLC that I can get a hold of if, we really do need clarification on something.
Great, thank you, Alex.
Absolutely.
All set? All right, moving on to agenda item C, 75 Highwood Drive, signed special permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Do we have anybody here for 75 Highwood Drive?
Oh, it's a little less intimidating. Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Heather Dudko, 27 Old Meeting House Road in Auburn, Mass. And I represent Persona Signs and National Sign Corporation, the sign manufacturer and installer for Hilton Garden. Go
I'll
ahead.
just mention,
Oh, sure, thank
my
you.
name is Susan Sheldon, I'm the owner's project manager, representing the owner.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know you were coming. Thank you. The petition before the board tonight is for a signed special permit to replace a sign cabinet on an existing freestanding sign for Hilton Garden Inn. It's previously Holiday Inn, changing ownership and name to Hilton Garden Inn. So in the southeast corner of the property, there is a very tall, large freestanding sign that's been there for a very long time, visible from 495. The hotel would like to remove the sign cabinet, which is 252 square feet, and replace it at 221.9, so in essence, 222 square foot. So it would be replaced on the existing pole that's on the property now. We had discussions about refacing the sign because that was an option, but the current design of the sign is a Holiday Inn branded look. So Hilton was not, they weren't in a position to just strictly reface it because it would not have the branded look for the Hilton Garden Inn.
It's item 4 on the map.
Item 4, yep. As I mentioned, the sign is visible from 495. There are 2 other monument signs on the property and a wall sign on the building, and that signage is not visible unless you're directly entering the property. So they're hoping and requesting to keep the sign in place so they can keep their visibility on 495. Anything else you'd like to add?
Item number 1, I don't know if we have the same presentation, but
Okay.
in this packet here, item number 1 is the 18-inch channel letters. They are on the building. They were removed from this submittal, and they were permitted through the building department because they're a building-mounted item. So that's already been installed and permitted and closed out.
We did remove that from here.
Yeah, so we did split this permit because of the different nature of the items.
Right, so there's channel letters on the building, there's a monument sign at the entrance of Highwood Park, and there's a monument sign at the entrance of the hotel, because as you enter the property, there's a very long access road with other buildings, so there's another monument on site directing you into the parking lot. So those signs have been applied for and permitted by building department.
Those signs have not. The only sign that's been permitted is sign number 1 in this package, which is on the building.
Okay. The monument signs, well, we did apply for them in the.
Separately?
Separately.
Okay,
Yep,
okay.
Yep. So this is the only item before the planning board, is this large, it's about 60-foot overall height.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, Mr. Lazardi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to confirm, you're putting a smaller, slightly shorter sign on the exact same pole?
Correct.
Not shorter, per se?
Said it was about 3 feet shorter in your
The
packet.
pole is the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
The pole is unchanged. The pole would be existing. It's been there since the original building was built. It's the
The actual sign itself
The
is
sign cabinet,
Yeah,
correct.
the
But the sign
cabinet.
cabinet is a little shorter than the existing sign cabinet.
So in effect, the overall height of the installation there will be a little bit
Yeah.
shorter.
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I see here we're looking at a number of waivers as far as overall square footage. I think it's fair to say a 50-square-foot sign, which would be about less than a quarter of the size of this, really wouldn't be visible from the target viewer that you're shooting for, which is drivers on 495. I do like that at least we're making it smaller, and obviously newer is usually better. The one question I had is there a reason you can't meet the requirement for landscaping the area around the sign? Or just what's your rationalization for asking for that waiver? Like, is the base in the middle of the woods, so like
Essentially, it's
there's
in the
no traffic,
parking.
nobody would ever see the landscaping?
No one would ever see it.
Yeah.
If you can, I don't know if you have this document right here, but it's in the parking lot, and it's visible on 495, but the base of this is only the top 20 feet or so is visible by 495. The rest of it remains in the parking lot of the hotel itself, at the tree line. So it's not that it's just not, it wouldn't make an impact to either the street or any passersby. It's, there is other landscaping already provided in the parking lot at the designated areas. So it's not really appropriate in this.
Okay. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Duffy?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, yeah, I don't have anything for questions-wise. The only thing I'd say is that I want to make sure that we include that the sign and the pole will be kept in upkeep in perpetuity. Like, I don't want lights out on the sign. I hate that. Drives me insane. And the pole just looking like it's rusted to, nothing is not okay. So those things will be in there.
Okay.
I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Only once, twice, return to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, as to the waivers, have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the waivers for signed special permit for 75 Highwood Drive. And I'll just list them off in just a sec here. So that would be section 6.2.10.d.1, 6.2.10.d.2, section 6.2.10.d.4, and section 6.2.10.d.7.
All right, a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. As to the signed special permit itself,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the signed special permit for 75 Highwood Drive,
okay, noting the
waivers as
Yeah.
noted.
All right, so we've got a motion made. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Good luck and welcome.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Moving on to agenda item D, 31 Fox Run Drive, Family Suite Special Permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Do we have anyone here for 31 Fox Run Drive?
How you doing?
How you doing? Just state your name for the record, and the floor is yours.
Mike LaRusso. I'm adding an addition to my parents' home at 31 Fox Run Drive.
Okay. Mr. Chiappa?
Good evening, welcome. We love these projects. We love seeing extended family helping each other out, or the younger generation taking care of their parents. Most of this seems fine to me, not really in our purview necessarily, but I just thought maybe I could get some clarification on you have an access from the second floor bedroom through sort of a short hallway with a closet into a bathroom in the existing house, which then leads into the stairway. I was just curious why if that's a required, like, do you need an extra egress or something? Like, I was curious what you were,
So that was just the other entrance from the addition to the main house, yeah. That was just
okay.
what was drawn up.
There were I didn't see a dimension specifically, but getting between the toilet and the bathtub, it looks like that's kind of a tight squeeze. The building department might wanna, or might have some say in how wide that is, and because if it's egress, I'm sure there's certain requirements as far as width and clear access through there in case of a fire or something like that.
Okay.
Other than that, everything else looks really good, and I have no further questions.
Mr. Duffy?
No, and I see that's a good-looking set of plans, and I have no further input either. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Lazardi?
No further questions.
The chair is pretty much all set as well. I'll just ask, Mr. Fattalia's question, because he's not here tonight. It's, you're on town sewer?
Correct. Correct.
All right, okay. All right, with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this one? Once, twice, seeing none, return to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to close public hearing?
Motion made, do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. As to the family suite special permit,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the family suite special permit at 31 Fox Run Drive.
all right, I have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item E, 1414 Andover Street, Family Suite Special Permit. We have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. Anyone here for 1414 Andover Street? Just state your name for the record. The floor is yours.
My name is Calvin Pujiba. I'm applying for in-law at 1414 Andover Street.
All right, very good. All right, we'll start with Mr. Duffy.
It looks, I took a little peek at that existing, so you have something under construction already over there?
Yeah, a year ago, we started renewing one of the houses because it's two separate units. That was special deed from like 1950s. And right now, for us to make it legal, well, I found out after it was a year done, project's done, for me to work on the front house, I have to tie them both and make it an in-law.
Okay, so basically, I don't really see any connection between the two structures there. Is that something that you're working on?
There is a connection in one of the plans there. It's the dining room on the front house. We're gonna connect that and make that a front entrance.
You're going to connect that wall, in other words, that wall is running all the way to the addition in the back?
Correct.
Okay, so you're going to have a little hallway there, basically?
Yes,
with
and that will be the
connecting,
front entrance.
Rather than have that little alleyway down in between the buildings?
Yes.
Is it-
No, the alleyway is gonna be gone.
That's going to be gone?
Yeah.
Is it already gone? Because you
No.
already built everything there.
Oh, no, it's not really gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. And Mr. Fatalia's question, you're on town sewer up there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And and I assume that it's going to be the front Cape-style house that's going to stay as the family suite, that's going to be the in-law apartment, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. And I know the main entrance for the main living area, which is around the side on a separate driveway there. And did I see a garage under there?
No.
No garage, okay. All right. Now, everything looks good to me, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Champa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's great to have these types of projects. I understand you probably ended up in a situation you weren't quite prepared for when they came to you with having to make it a family suite. So just want to make sure, it's color coded, so I think I have it, but basically you're going to create a common space in the front house being the one that's going to be the family suite, which will then provide access to the main house in the back. And then we're going to have a smaller second floor in the family suite, which is why we have the footages of 712 square feet and 285 square feet. One of the only questions I had about just my knowledge of family suite requirements is, I believe that you are not allowed with a family suite to have two unique front doors accessing each unit, both facing the road. And I think there's a provision about the family suite door, or family suite itself can't be closer to the road than the main suite. Has any of that been brought to your attention with the building department?
No, not that. I just thought.
Again, you are kind of stuck that the houses already are where they are,
Yeah.
but I
No,
was just curious if they're
I
working
only
on
knew
that.
that it needed an exit and a front door for both units, really. So I thought I switched the front door to an exit, but I did not know it couldn't have the requirement of not being close to the street.
Okay,
But
I didn't brush up entirely on the exact wording, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you can't have two front doors, or the family suite itself can't have a front-facing door.
okay, so
But I wouldn't just throw this on you. Maybe what you do is you take that window that's over by the porch, and so you convert and maybe do something nice where the door is. Again, I don't mean to drain your potentially limited resources and finances, but there could be a way to maybe just have that door on the side facing that same porch. So now you go up on the porch, you have door to the rear house, door to the suite, and then that might alleviate your circumstances. But that's really between you and the building department. Other than that, I'm in favor of the project. I know you're definitely making the best out of a tougher situation than you might have anticipated, and we're glad that you're trying to do the right thing here.
all right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Lazardi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions.
Chair is all set as well. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this one? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimous. As to the family suite special permit,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the family suite special permit at 1414 Andover Street.
I have a motion made. Do I have-
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, that moves us on to agenda item F, 1879 Main Street. This is continued from our 1/8/24 meeting. I don't know, isn't that like stepping on the logo? What are you doing?
I'm not sure. Every time I take it down, it rolls around, so I don't know.
All right, once everybody's settled, just give your names for the record. The floor is yours.
Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants.
Sarah Maggi-Moore, Treehouse Brewing Company.
All right, great. So this has been a
Sorry,
long...
before we start, I'll give you, just because I have to say, we only have the 4 members present, so if we get to that point, it's up to you guys what you want to do.
Okay.
Obviously, this is 4 out of 4 tonight, so just so you know, okay?
All of which can vote, all 4 of these members,
Correct.
right? Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, so this has gone on a bit here, so I think it makes sense maybe to kind of give you a summary of the whole project. We did meet a couple of times with you over the last 9 months, give or take, but I think in light of that, it makes sense to kind of walk you through. So what I'd like to do is give you the project summary, where we've been, where things stand, and then turn it over to you guys and try to answer any questions that you might have. So we're located at 1879 Main Street. As you guys know, we're in the MUB zoning district. We have the challenge of a floodplain overlay district. We also have 25 and 50-foot conservation local buffers, and we're in the riverfront area associated with Heath Brook. The project site is approximately 2.5 acres in size, and we front along Main Street and Airport Road, which is, Airport Road is a private road, and we are at the intersection there, right across the street from Treehouse Brewery. The site is the former Funland Amusement Center. It's been previously developed and degraded. It's pavement up to the wetlands, plus or minus, and has really been sitting there vacant for the better part of 12-ish years, give or take. What we're proposing and why we're here tonight is a site plan review, as well as a land disturbance special permit. We have a 138-space parking lot. We have access off of Main Street. We're providing accessible sidewalks, ramps, and crosswalks along Main Street. And with any luck and an approval by the board, we'll be providing all of this information to DOT as the final step in the process. We have significant site landscaping. We have 47 trees and/or shrubs on site. We have site lighting. The proposal actually consists of plus or minus 0.4 acre reduction in impervious surface. So under the existing, we have about 1.7 acres of impervious. Under the proposed, we have 1.3 acres of impervious surface. Stormwater is addressed through a wet basin located all the way down gradient, furthest point away from Main Street, up against the buffers associated with Heath Brook. And again, pedestrian and vehicular traffic will eventually be reviewed, approved, and accepted by DOT. So we do have some legitimate improvements as part of this site plan that I think are worth mentioning here. So it provides much-needed overflow parking for the brewery. The brewery's been there for the better part of the year, and these 138 additional parking spaces will provide some additional capacity when they need that additional capacity. Again, we have a 15% reduction in impervious surface. you're not conservation, we've gone to conservation, we've reviewed this with them, they have approved the project and issued the order of conditions, but there are a few things that I think are worth noting that we were able to implement as part of the plan. So beyond the reduction in impervious surface, if you went out there today, you'd see that within the 100-foot buffer to the river, there's a substantial amount of pavement from the old golf cart tracks or go-kart tracks. We're completely removing and restoring everything within the inner 100-foot riverfront area. I don't need to tell you guys that this is also in the floodplain, and the floodplain associated with Heath Brook has capacity issues, right? When we get some of these bigger, more intense rainfalls, you know that we've had issues in that floodplain. We're actually providing an additional 30,000 cubic feet, which is a 20% increase over existing conditions. Is it a drop in the bucket when you look at the entire watershed? Yeah, but we don't need to provide that, but we've been able to increase the floodplain storage provided on site by about 30,000 cubic feet. The design also fully satisfies DEP stormwater management standard, and really, due to the numerous resource areas on site, a parking lot really is an ideal use for the site. We don't have a building that would be subject to flood insurance and all the things that go along with building in a floodplain that make it even more challenging. So to kind of give you a sense for where we are and how active we've been to try to address local review comments. We initially submitted this in May. We had our first meeting with you in June. Got our first DPW review letter in July. We're back in front of you again in July. DPW had some questions specific to what's considered a redevelopment analysis, and we really worked with them for the better part of 90 days, give or take, trying to address their specific current concerns about how we were approaching development within the riverfront area. We're back in front of you in October, really just to kind of give you an overview to the status update. I think we might have been called back just to give you that update. We got to the point where it made sense to take the discussion to conservation relative to the riverfront, so we did that in, I believe it was November. Presented our case. They reviewed all of the information we provided, agreed that we complied with the regulations, closed the hearing, and issued the order of conditions. As we stand right now, we don't have any outstanding technical items to address with DPW. So we've addressed DPW's comments. All DEP comments have been addressed. As I mentioned, we've worked with conservation. They've issued the order of conditions. The planner prepared hopefully a final review letter where there were some conditions noted. We take no exception with any of those conditions and are more than willing to work through that process. And then finally, the last piece to the puzzle is DOT, 38's a DOT road. We have cement concrete sidewalks and handicap ramps and crosswalks. All of that geometry configuration, what have you, will be reviewed with DOT as part of that process. But we can't do that until we get, hopefully, your approval, and then we can move forward with DOT. So I think that kind of gets us caught up to speed on what we've accomplished since May of 2023.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hanley, I appreciate the obvious hard work that you guys have done dealing with the drainage and you know, suspended solids and stormwater runoff issues that you were encountering at that site. And I'd like to say that I'm always happy to see a previously developed site, you know, come back to life, basically. It certainly is not a pretty thing to look at as you're driving by. So I'm going to ask you a few questions that may or may not have already been addressed, and if it has been, just say so, because I have a letter that's dated January 4th from engineering, and you've probably done some of this work since then. There's something about an IDR letter that was dated August 17th that wasn't responded to. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so let me try to pull it up so that I have it in front of me here. So we went back and forth. We probably had a half a dozen different review letters from DPW. The August 17th review letter, as I understand it, and I think, Alex, you probably talked to him, but it was specific to the stormwater management standards and the detail needed to satisfy those standards. We had a difference of opinion with DPW that really resulted in, 3 months of back and forth trying to iron that out. The way that we thought made the most sense, because we were confident in what we were doing, and we also hired a team of conservation and wetland experts, was to approach conservation and have a conversation with them. So where the first comment is specific to stormwater management standards, we have prepared the alternatives analysis that was needed, provided that to conservation. They reviewed it and they approved it.
Okay.
And DEP no longer has any comments either.
Okay. Great answer, just what I wanted to hear. So this is number 3 on this letter,
Okay.
and this is one that's near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
As a elderly resident, what's the story with the handicap parking spaces in the satellite lot there? I know that, the main issue is that it's 200 feet, more than 200 feet from the main entrance, and, for some of us, for some people, that's just too far to travel.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's somebody who's in wheelchair. I'm sure that's not Treehouse's main demographic, but, I'm sure that there are people that would and could come if it was accessible.
So I'm not sure how it originated, if it originated out of our office not being sure of how to satisfy ADA's reg, or if it came out of DPW or whoever it came out of. But the question was, since we're developing a 138 space parking lot, and there's a certain number of handicap spaces that are required when you develop any parking lot, do we provide them here in the new satellite lot, or do we provide them at the brewery golf course? We went back and forth, we looked at everything, and it appeared to us that it should be in the satellite lot. That's the safest bet on our part. We did reach out to the building department, and then I believe, Alex, you also had a discussion with them where basically, as we showed it, was considered acceptable on the plan. And at that point, if the board has other comments, we can certainly consider that stuff, but.
It might be acceptable, and I understand that there could be some gray area in that regard, but, common sense sort of dictates that handicapped people need to be parked closer to the front door. So I would like to consider that for a vote. That maybe not all 5 ADA parking spaces, but maybe 2 of them could be added to the main lot. So I'd like to maybe consider that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move on from there. I think you've covered, as far as I can tell, all the bases on the stormwater and the suspended solids and that type of thing, so, with engineering. So as far as I know, we're all good with that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is there still something up in the air about the concrete versus bituminous sidewalk, or that's going to be concrete, right?
No, so.
Cement concrete.
Yes, right. So we, on the original plan, we had bituminous concrete. It was
Right.
one of DPW's comments, as it always is. We talked to Treehouse, they were more than
We've
willing
learned we
to.
have to make that distinction.
Absolutely, and it also isn't required, but Treehouse was good enough to say, well, there's cement concrete everywhere, so let's continue that ribbon, so, and material.
Very good. Let's see if I have anything else for you. Okay, and you say you provided the alternative analysis
Oh, yeah.
for the BMP, or?
Yeah, I mean, so I brought it just so you could get a sense for the
Yeah.
magnitude of the effort that was required and that we put into it and provided to conservation as well as.
Fantastic, that's great news. All right, I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. If I could just say one more thing. As far as the parking lot construction in itself I think everything is, you've covered all the bases as far as I'm concerned. But going back to day one, when you guys came here, we still have some concerns about the difficulty of crossing the street and the dangers that may present. So do you guys have any input on that?
So what we're showing now is a sidewalk along Main Street. The sidewalk will have ADA ramps, and then we're proposing that we reconfigure the existing crosswalk. Because right now, what happens is, if you were to cross 38, you'd have to cross
Airport
Airport
Road.
and then go diagonally back,
Yeah.
okay?
Which is the long run.
Which is the longer run. It
Yeah.
doesn't really make a lot of sense for people, because, right, so we are, what we're proposing is to go directly across 38, perpendicular across.
Okay.
Obviously, it's state highway.
Has to weigh in on
We
that.
can propose stuff, right, but
Sure.
ultimately, it's going to come down to what DOT expects us to do. And then we're going to do that. So there could be a change there, but at a minimum, I mean, what we're going to have is a crosswalk that meets all the industry standards for access.
Okay, because I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen, really. And the other little blind spot there I notice is like an electrical transformer or something near the corner of Livingston and Maine, that, if you're driving, towards Lowell on Route 38, the crosswalk is on the other side of that. And people want to take that right turn on red. I know you're supposed to stop, but many, many people don't. They just kind of zip right around that corner. But there's a little green electrical box.
Is this on the other side of 38?
No, it's
on the
on
treehouse
the
side?
existing treehouse side.
Trying to think. On the
on-
treehouse side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So that's a little bit of a blind spot there too. So I'm not exactly sure where you're proposing the new crosswalk area.
Yeah.
But that blind spot should be considered, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
Take a peek at that if you would. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, just kind of continuing along the thread of the handicap spaces, I do like the suggestion to potentially put at least a few of them into the main lot. But looking at where you have them in the overflow lot, it looks like they're 2/3 of the way back there. So we're kind of compounding the problem that, they're a few hundred feet from the door, and then there's a few hundred feet of your parking lot
Yeah.
kind of from there. Can you talk about kind of how they wound up there?
So this site is loaded with site constraints, right? One of those site constraints is the floodplain. And basically what it means is that we basically have to hold the existing grade of the surface, right? And so closer up toward Main Street, we exceed the maximum pitch that's allowed for a new handicap space. So we had to site it in an area that had less than 2% slope to meet the regulation. So unfortunately, right, because it totally makes sense, right? We'd normally put it up as close as we could, but we're limited on what we can do to the surface out there.
Okay, so that's the absolute closest you can get to the front of
At
the
the
lot. and hit
absolute
those
closest,
Regulations.
yeah.
Okay. Then yes, then I'm even more in favor of
Okay.
potentially moving some of those up
Okay.
into the other lot. I think the other thing here, kind of speaking along with like the pedestrian traffic crossing, how often do you expect this lot to be used? How often do you expect it to be at capacity?
So we anticipate it as business dictates, so when we have special events, really, we're looking forward to expanding availability for tee times, for golf during certain times of the year, and we think this is going to allow us some more flexibility to do that, make some improvements to our golf course, so just this lot will allow us flexibility that we simply don't have today.
Okay, so is it a reasonable assumption that there will be cars parked here most Fridays and Saturdays?
I don't think all year round, no. I think during the holiday period, probably more. I think, Saturday mornings and golf season, going into Saturday afternoons, there might be a little more overflow. I certainly do not expect it to be full up, all year round and every week.
Okay.
And we've been operating, without it right now during some of those peak times, but certainly it would be a greater convenience to some folks to have that. But really, we're looking forward to golf season.
I definitely notice when I drive by that lot, it looks full a lot of the time. And then if you have like a designated special event, whether it be like a launch or a wedding or something that you're doing is going to use a lot, are you all planning on having a detail there or something to, mitigate the number of pedestrians crossing?
Certainly. We've worked with public safety on several occasions, certainly around town events as well. So that's something that's pretty par for the course for, excuse the pun, for Treehouse Brewing Company. And then also, we have our own staff. Every single one of our locations has lot attendants and folks that you'll see in the fluorescent vests that, as, business demands, we bring people out there to make it smooth and as easy as possible for our guests.
Will there be because this is the accessory lot, so will there be attendants stationed in this lot too?
I don't believe that would be necessary, but if it was necessary, absolutely, we have the staff to do so. I at this point, don't think that would be necessary, based on all of our operations in our other locations. But if, our goal is for the most pleasant experience possible for our guests, so if that's what it's going to take, then that's what Treehouse will do.
Okay, so maybe potentially if we look at this and we see the lot starting to get more and more used, it's something we could revisit down the road.
We will be the first people to act upon making this an outstanding guest experience. So we will do our job, and you hopefully will not have to make that phone call, but we've got a great, rapport with the town, and we take feedback, so certainly.
Great. I think that's all my questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do love crunching numbers and talking about traffic, so I know it was potentially down to 65 spaces at one point, but now that things have been cleared up with engineering, DPW, we're back up to 138. So we have a 138 space lot. Mr. Haney's opening remarks, this is badly needed parking. So 138 spaces, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 1.5 passengers per vehicle. So we're looking at 210 pedestrians traveling to and from that lot. If there's a 3-drink maximum, if they're drinking 1 beverage per hour, so that means we have 1.5 people basically spending 3 hours at Treehouse, which means we have 70 people every hour going in both directions, which is more than 1 a minute. That's a lot of hitting the walk light during operational hours for Treehouse. Obviously, off hours, it's not going to affect it that much. Then you just mentioned that potentially there will be some golf overflow. So now we're going to have people with push carts carrying bags and shoes and whatnot waiting to cross. Now, granted, that will increase because the time to play 9 holes of golf, then they're probably staying in the restaurant and then coming back, so it's less trips. But part of my concern is also that the trips will be slower because we're going to have 88 parking over there, which means that light timer is going to have to be configured to allow for wheelchairs, people on crutches, things like that. And while I don't have a tremendous amount of faith on Mass DOT to get it right the first time, I'm sure they would take that into account. I can't see, it pains me to think of what that's going to do to an already highly congested Route 38 intersection. To add that much pedestrian walk traffic, that many interruptions of the light, and the duration that it's going to be set at, because you can't differentiate between a pedestrian that is ambulatory versus a pedestrian that is ADA. I'm really concerned at what this is going to do to Route 38. So number one, I mean, if this were to pass, I would highly recommend that you work with MassDOT and get your ADA spaces over to the other side, if that can reduce the timing on that light, so that it's maybe, 40 seconds instead of a minute, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in MassDOT, pedestrian crossing regulations, but I do know if they see handicap accessible spaces on one side, they're going to have to configure that light so that someone who's on crutches or in a wheelchair can get across. So have you had any thought to using this as employee parking and therefore freeing up more space on the other side? Employees working 8-hour shifts If you have them over there, again, now you can reduce the amount of pedestrian traffic going across.
Yep, we absolutely anticipate using some of those for employee parking as well, yes.
Okay, those were all of my thoughts, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, well, I mean, this has gone on for a while, so, you know, my comments from, as we've gone along, don't change in that 12 years, I don't think is even right. I feel like I've been here, my eldest child is 23, and I'm not sure he ever went to Funland.
Okay.
So it's been like that for some time. It's in desperate need of something other than what it is right now. And there are very few options, I think, that make sense, that are less, that could be less detrimental than just a parking lot. You know, we already had another option put forward there that we all thought made no sense because it wasn't gonna work. So to me, this just makes, you know, it's the least impactful when it could be a lot of other things, and I don't think any of those would be better. That's one. Two, obviously, there are a lot of spaces, but, you know, I mean, I know it's busy all the time, but the likelihood of it being fully packed there and fully packed on the other side all the time seems unlikely, you know, and especially because you're talking about it being a little bit more seasonal in terms of what that would be, because you have the golfing, and, you know, and whatnot. But I also think that there's a benefit here for the other businesses that are around as well, because I just don't believe in reality for a second that there aren't some folks parking in some places, maybe they shouldn't be, and then finding their way over to Treehouse, which means you're affecting the parking of other places, which could be a detriment to those businesses and their success, which we don't want. So, you know, I mean, you've kind of had a year to work out the kinks in the current parking lot. I think you have an idea of the way it works in and around that area at this point. So this isn't gonna come as a full, you know, a full shock when you have to work with this. So, you know, to me, this just, you know, it kills many birds with one stone for me, you know, in a lot of areas. The only thing I'd say I'll agree with my colleagues as far as moving some of the ADA space, although I suppose if any are left over, that will not change the light thing. So if any of them are left, it won't make much of a difference. So I'm on board with, you know, 2, 3, whatever we come up with as getting moved over and trading out the spaces, just to make that much easier. But I suspect that the current configuration, which requires you to crisscross that entire intersection, if you press the button, cannot possibly be less than what this would be anyways, because if you were trying to make that trek in a wheelchair or any other, you know, any other handicap, you know, issue, that's much, much further that you have to go, and you're gonna need a lot more time to do so. So I suspect that whatever that button is now, it has to be fairly long, or you wouldn't be able to make that crisscross across that entire intersection. And I don't know, I think we talked about this back then, and again, I don't know if this comes down to a, you know, a mass highway thing or not, but one of the things that was brought up is that right turn on red, you know, that people will do and have been historically doing probably. Whether or not there's some, you know, indication light that can be installed that alerts the person in that lane that someone is crossing, because I don't think you get red and yellow at that intersection when you press the button. I think all the lights just go red. So if they don't go red and yellow, you don't have that indication that this is a different reason that you're stopping than any other. I mean, if it does, then fine, but I don't think it does. If it does, I guess it sort of alleviates the problem, but if not, you know, a sign that's giving some indication that there's people coming across, because it's be hard with that car sitting next to you to see as you're coming across and to tell you, don't make this right on red right now. You know, I don't know, they just installed something weird like that up River Road, up on one of the things. I mean, it's not really, I'm not really sure why it's not operational. It was when they turned it on and whatnot, but something like that may be what would go there. I have no idea. But something that just tells you, you can't go red now. You can't go right on red here.
Which would probably be a no right on red sign, would be
Yeah, and whether or not that's an
Cover it, right?
always thing, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know if
yeah,
it needs
right,
to be an
okay,
always
okay.
thing, because you're talking about, there's probably a whole bunch of times where it'd be fine, you just go ahead and take the right of red. It's really only if there's somebody crossing that
Okay.
it's really an issue. That's why I think, and it would help things move along, if you don't have it all the time, that you can, so. And as far as the auxiliary parking on the ground, because I can't see it from here, do you have the right arrow painted on the ground, right turn only?
Yes, yeah,
And you'll have a sign, right turn only?
with signs.
So then my comment would
We
be
have-
that those must be maintained constantly. I don't want the arrow worn away and then left like that. It has to stay visible, as does the sign, in perpetuity. I think that's it. And the rest of it, I mean, you're gonna have to sort out with Mass Highway anyways. We can tell you to do a million things. And if Mass Highway says no, then what does it mean? It's easier to just let them tell you what you have to do and what you can do than to do that. So, other than that, I'm all set. I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with questions, comments, or concerns?
This is my
Nope, you gotta go up, you gotta give your name, your address, and then the floor will be yours.
June Wojcik, 78 Deering Drive. And I just have a question about the handicap parking. My husband has one of those placards so that he can park in handicap. And I would just say with the description of where the places would be in the new lot would be useless. Those sites, places would be useless. And I'm wondering if there's a reason why they couldn't all be moved closer to the door.
But it's not a matter of all, it's not a matter that it couldn't. It was just a matter of, this is where they would have originally been required, is on the lot that's being created. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. First is that if you just read the reg, you're supposed to require, provide a certain amount of spaces, right? So that's what we did. We then checked with building, and they said it was acceptable. If they get moved over, right, you have to make provisions for the accessible space. So you end up having a loss of parking over there, right? And so when we were having discussions, and we came in with 152 spaces originally to 138, there was discussions about cutting that in half and trying to work through all of this stuff. The idea of moving those spaces and losing, say, 4 parking spaces at the brewery was a real consideration. I think we're in a position where we can reconsider that as we hear the remaining comments, but that was the basis for it, is that we would lose, if we take all, I think we have 4, or we have 6, if we were to take them all over there, we're going to lose 3 or 4 actual numbered spaces over there. And that was what we're trying to contend with.
And what is it, a total of how many, 5?
Yeah, let me take a peek. I believe it was 5.
It was 5?
I see 5 on the plan here.
I mean, that is your trade-off a little bit, is, you theoretically may push a few folks to go to that lot that wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
And that's based on, will those spaces be used on the, all used on the treehouse side? But I think the resident comment, it does make some sense, because, there are a lot of folks who have those placards who are allowed to park in handicap, that it's not necessarily a wheelchair issue. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of other reasons why you might have that. I mean, theoretically, I don't know, but could not one of those things be maybe that it would be very difficult for you to walk from there over? Not your inability to, but a distance issue. So maybe it might make more sense to just move them. And then we alleviate your light issue with, potentially the longer light. Put them all over where, because I think there is some sense to not asking people to make that trek. I mean, you guys, you can, I mean, it could always be revisited as well, I suppose. If you guys want to do your research and you want to keep track of this, and if you constantly have, no more than one handicap spot filled ever, then maybe we can talk about it again. But I mean, there's no reason why that, folks wouldn't be coming to your establishment, that might need those spaces. So, I mean, I don't see why, at least initially, we wouldn't be better off this way.
So one thing we have agreed to do is, it was asked, requested by DPW, and we've agreed to do it, is 6 months in, we're going to refresh the traffic report. As part of that, we could assess the demand, need, and revisit those spaces if that's something that you'd be agreeable to.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I would probably say we can do it, on both of the reviews, only because then we don't accidentally only catch the wrong 6 months. Because obviously, I mean, whether that's the busier season, what I mean? I don't know where your numbers, where your months are gonna come out exactly. I mean, it looks like the first 6 months should get the window we're looking for.
Yeah.
So we should have a better idea, but does that make sense? Okay, all right. So we can add that to that.
Okay.
All right, anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none? Bring it back to the board. Anything further from the board?
I have a quick comment. I would say that the chairman's idea of revisiting the handicap need in the satellite parking lot is great, but I think in the interim, in the short term here, at least a couple of those spaces, you guys should voluntarily move over to the main building area. That would be my suggestion. And then do a reassessment on the 6 month and the 12 month. Because, I can speak from experience that most handicapped people are not gonna park in that parking lot and walk over to Treehouse.
So I just would like to note that we have not requested any increase in occupancy for the campus. So as our current lot is.
Mind if I ask what the occupancy is?
Oh, gosh, on the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I'm just curious about that. And one more thing, if I might ask, pardon me for interrupting, but if I recall, on the initial site plan review, there were going to be 6 month and 12 month traffic reviews as well, and I was just curious if those were.
So I can speak to that. We're actually, I think, coming up on possibly the 6 month mark. I'm not sure when the golf was activated last year. So it would be the 6 months of when the golf and the clubhouse and the outpost were all operational. And then this would be an entirely separate from, 6 months from when the satellite parking lot is fully operable, and then 12 months when that is fully operable.
And I would say to date, golf ops haven't even been full ops yet with golf. But the point that I wanted to make previously is we are already meeting the requirements for the number of ADA spaces for the occupancy that we have. It's not been an issue at all for us where we've had folks with ADA vehicles. Any additional that we've had, we've never had that issue. And we've got a really, really communicative staff that's really, really
How many are
active.
on the main site now?
I don't have the exact number. I'd have to look into it. I would guess it's 6 to 8. We did do, when they put in the pro shop, we did flag spots there, but I don't know off the top of my head. Probably 6 to 8.
Fully compliant.
Yeah, well, certainly it's fully compliant, right?
All right, so then for my, I guess, so we recommendation, at least temporarily, at least 2 of them go over now, and then we can revisit in the 6 months. That'll give you potentially 10 over at the main site,
Yeah,
correct?
2 more, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so that's that. The only other one I just thought of too, because I don't think I said, but I noticed you guys use details now, correct?
When needed, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just seems like on the weekend I see there's at least a couple of detail offices there. Is
It's
that
not
right?
every weekend, but yes, during volume.
So what I would say is that the only thing I'd say for this is, I know we said special events, but I think the other thing would be that if you find that you need to redistribute the detail offices, instead of having 2 of them in the main lot on those days when you do that, you will have the ability to ask one to go to the other lot? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a great relationship
So,
with
well,
public.
but I would just make sure that you clear that with them,
Yep.
so that if it turns out on a Saturday, it starts to look, a little hectic over there, whether it's the ins and outs or whatever. Obviously, being able to move one of those offices over there to help alleviate any, problems would be,
Absolutely.
ideal. So we can add that in. Okay. All right. So any other questions, comments, or concerns from the board? You've seen the conditions that we have here. We have no issue with those or the ones added this evening.
We do not.
And the waivers are the 4 listed on here? Nothing else? Okay. All right, then what is the pleasure of the board? I'm sorry, I gotta ask you, you want us to close the hearing?
Yeah, I guess I just believe we've addressed everything we can possibly address. We've spent 9 months trying to work through the technical review comments. Like the chair mentioned, that the site is a challenge and the use is good. So if there's anything else I can help you with, I'll try to do that, but
So to alleviate ourselves getting in trouble, I'll make sure I do it this way. Is there anyone on the board who has any other unanswered questions before we move to potentially close the hearing? No issues, comments, or concerns here either then? Okay. All right, then what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, did we close the public
No,
hearing?
that's what we're doing now.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing,
I
please.
have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Now, as to the waivers as requested, do we have a motion on the waivers?
Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the 4 waivers?
Correct.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the 4 waivers, 1 through 4, section 6.1, and so on.
I have a motion made on the waivers, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. As to the site plan review, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, do we need to make the site plan review and land disturbance?
I do them separately always, just
Okay.
because.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan review.
All right, with the conditions as listed and those discussed this evening. All right, we have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, so 3-1. Okay. Well, I guess we can do the land disturbance permit, but do we have a motion on the land disturbance permit?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the land disturbance permit.
All right, I have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, so the site plan review and the land disturbance permits are not approved.
Mr. Chairman, it's actually the special permit that would be not approved.
Sorry.
The special permit needs the supermajority. The site plan review and the land disturbance are 3 that are required.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
So what does that mean? That they have to get back to the special?
Moving on to agenda item G. The applicant has requested to be continued to our February 26th meeting at 7:20. I have a motion to continue.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion made, we have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item H. The applicant has requested that this be continued to our 2/26 meeting at 7:10. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second? Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item I, 16 Shawshene, I'm sorry, it's the same thing, it's the other one. So that is to be continued to 7:15 on 2/26. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made and second, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That moves us to agenda item J, 1625 Andover Street. This is continued from our 1/22 meeting.
I made them all, actually, I'll read them. Yeah.
Once everybody gets settled, if you name for the record, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, David Plunkett, representing the applicant before the board tonight. At the table with me is Dean Graffio, who is a principal of the entity that will be operating from the site. I have Kim Hazavadian, who is our engineer, a traffic engineer, and Matt Hammer from Landplex, who is the site engineer. Mr. Chairman, just as a quick recap from the last meeting, there's been a lot of work that's been done in this interim period of time. We'd like to actually thank Mr. Dirk for meeting with Mr. Hazavadian, and that they put a lot of work into trying to come to a meeting of the minds, and I believe that that has been accomplished. If you look at the last update letter from the town planner, Alexandra Lauder, that it would appear that most of the matters of issue that have been addressed. There's a waiver list and conditions list that we're all in agreement on that has been circulated with the board tonight. Also, there's the final report from the peer review from Mr. Dirk dated February 9th, in which we believe that we've got a closeout of the issues pertaining to traffic, at least between the engineers. So at this point, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is just ask Mr. Hazavadian to give a quick encapsulate what has happened in this interim period of time, and then we'll go from there.
Good evening, I'm Kim Hazardian, traffic engineer with TEP LLC. Since we last met, I prepared a new memorandum that included revised trip generation. The dispensary's floor area was reduced to 4,121 square feet, so we redid the numbers for that square footage. Also, that memorandum notes that the applicant is willing to restrict the driveway to Andover Street to right turns out only. And the site plan is changed, not really a traffic engineering item, but something that does relate to traffic, I suppose. The driveway out the back has been widened to 24 feet. We provided that information to the town's peer reviewer, Jeff Dirk. He conducted his review, and we believe that the comments are addressed with respect to traffic. Mr. Dirk did provide some potential conditions in his final letter.
Okay. Do we want to take this separately and discuss it, or do you want to just go through everything?
What would be the two,
What's that?
as far as
Any
traffic
questions?
versus
Yeah.
everything else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do traffic separately.
Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Champa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I reviewed the notes in the traffic assessment. A couple of things I had questions about is, let me just call, sorry, there were a lot of files here and they all have very similar names, so I have to look for the correct date. Okay, so one question I have here is, and I'm sorry, this is from the traffic, Gold Standard Consulting, January 25th, 2024. And can't quite see what page that's on. These don't have page numbers on them, but it's right under Table 2. It's saying here, it's important to bear in mind that not all vehicle trips anticipated by the proposed dispensary will represent new trips that otherwise would not be on the road at the given time period. It is anticipated that many, if not nearly all, customers to the facility will be pass-by trips rather than destination trips, thus have minimal impact on traffic conditions. So based on some of the previous introductory summaries and just general knowledge of the area, you're not anticipating any Andover customers at this dispensary? I kind of thought that was, what you were hoping for in locating it near Andover.
Well, that's not my analysis, that's Gold Standard's analysis. I did find some pass-by data that was collected at another marijuana dispensary, and I cited that. It was roughly half the traffic was pass-by traffic. I would say that some of the traffic will be pass-by that's going to be on Andover Street anyway, but some of it will be new to the area.
Okay, so your assessment contradicts Gold's assessment.
Just maybe to clarify, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the final analysis, it was the meeting between Mr. Dirk and Mr. Hazavadian, both being traffic engineers, and the final analysis was based upon the criteria as acceptable and utilized for such technical analysis. So that's, the gold standard information was not necessarily part and parcel of the analysis. It was Mr. Hazavadian as a professional traffic engineer dealing with Mr. Dirk as a professional engineer being the town's peer review consultant.
Okay, because we now have 4 traffic analysis packages to look at. The first one that was presented by the applicant said that there would be no noticeable increase in trips, which our peer review disagreed with. I myself disagreed with that, just based on my common sense of the area and knowledge of the area. So then Gold Standard came in. They had a whole other set of numbers that were based on other data, which made it seem like there would be less traffic, but now we're saying, well, we can't trust all of their analysis, and we have another thing that's saying there will be more traffic. So I'm having a hard time. It seems like the numbers and the analysis keeps changing to fit a different narrative. And it's making me very uncomfortable that where we have a lot of residents that are concerned about traffic, that we've done our best to alleviate those concerns.
Well, I'll defer to Kim in a moment, but in terms of alleviating the concerns, I think that the final product of the report by the town peer engineer after final meeting with Mr. Hazavadian is that there's an analysis for the town to rely upon in which certain steps have been taken. Kim has talked about some of the changes, and in fact, that there are some recommendations in Mr. Dirk's report that we're willing to accept, which is the final mitigation portion of his report. And, I think the best way of presenting this is that we have presented to the town aspects relative to this site, which is, an approved, which is a site in which this type of development can be developed. We've presented to the town and through the town's consultant engineer all the data and information that is necessary that the town's consultant engineer wanted for the purpose of his final analysis, and that we now have a report in which it closes out all the comments relative to the concerns of the town's consultant engineer. So I think that's the, from our perspective, I don't know if Kim wants to add to that.
No, I have nothing to add to that. You've summarized what's gone on. Mr. Dirk and I have worked out the details from a traffic engineering point of view.
Okay.
So that's our, so if you need clarification, we can get it.
So, all right, so you authored the excuse me, just want to make sure I have, again, there's a lot of files here. So we have a traffic review dated February 9th, 2024, prepared by Van Ness and Associates. This is yours.
That's correct. And for the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jeffrey Dirk, I'm the managing partner with Vanessa and Associates. Thank you. And you're correct, we produced 2 peer review reports for the board.
Okay, and on what I believe is, again, pages aren't numbered, what I believe is page 2, it says we're expecting an additional 73 trips during Saturday midday peak hour. I'm sorry, 516 trips on an average weekday, 686 trips on a Saturday, 46 additional trips during peak hour, 73 additional trips during Saturday peak hour. That's your analysis.
So that's my review, that's the applicant's analysis, which I agree with. I think just, as you said, there's a lot of reports and way too many numbers. And what I would say is, in looking at the numbers, just to be careful in looking at them, what those numbers are that you're mentioning is the net difference in trips between what was approved for the site and what is currently being proposed. So what they've shown in those net numbers are, if you compared the impacts of the fine dining restaurant that was originally approved for the site to what they're proposing, it puts it in context if you want to say, well, how much more onerous or impactful is this proposed use in relation to what the town had previously proposed? But really, if you're looking at the project itself, so just when they build it, how much traffic is going to be generated, it's 893 daily vehicle trips on an average weekday, 81 trips during the evening peak hour, and then on a Saturday, it's 1,092 trips, vehicle trips. And during the Saturday midday peak hour, it's 121 peak hour trips. So if the project was approved and constructed, that's the amount of traffic that will be entering and exiting that property. I would say, as well, as you're looking at those numbers, what we try to do is we use the consultants, I think it's Gold Star Consulting. We read that letter, but we more or less put that aside as some good information. What we're really focused on is what the traffic engineer produced in terms of the numbers, because those are the real numbers that we're going to look at in terms of the impacts of the project. Although there will be some portion of the traffic that will be on the roadway anyways, and may visit the project site in conjunction with a trip if they're going home or happen to be driving by and they stop in and make a purchase on their way to wherever they happen to be going. I mean, that's some portion of the traffic, but as you're looking at the driveway, it doesn't matter whether it's pass-by trips or new trips. It's all new traffic as it relates to that driveway. So as you're looking at the intensity of traffic going in and out of that driveway, it's all new. So I would say, you could look at the Gold Star Consulting letter for context and then just kind of put that aside, because it doesn't matter whether you call it pass-by or new. As it relates to that driveway, it's lefts or right turns going in. It's all new traffic. So those numbers of just focusing on the peak hour, the driveway will have 81 vehicles going in and out during the afternoon peak period. And then during the Saturday peak period, the driveway will have 121 vehicle trips. So those are really the numbers to be focused on, and that's really what we focused on as a part of analysis, was to make sure those numbers were done correctly and that they're consistent with the way every other applicant that's appeared before the board, those numbers are generated the same way every other applicant that's come in before you generated their numbers. So we've done those reviews, and so it's all consistent. The way it's been done is consistent. So we set those other things aside, just said that's okay for context, but we're going to look at these numbers because these are the industry standard numbers to look at. And then, again, just pass by, just forget about all of that, because it doesn't matter from the standpoint of the driveway. So as they were talking about the modifications of the site plan, we asked that these modifications be made, and the applicant agreed to do these because trying to have 78 vehicles, some going in, some going out, directly onto Andover Street will cause, as you know, because it's so busy, will cause backups into the site. So that back access that comes out onto the driveway to Lowell 5 is very important, because if the direct access on Andover Street is congested and causes queuing within the site, people need to go out the other way. So they've widened that driveway to account for the fact that the 78 vehicle trips on the Saturday, we need to be able to get them out, or the 121, that they can come out the other driveway. So that's why what you see is some of these changes on the plan, it's reflective of the 81 and the 121 as being traffic generated by the project.
Okay. And so versus the fine dining restaurant, what is the percentage increase of traffic that we expect for this proposal?
So the fine dining restaurant, just focusing on the peak hour, the fine dining was going to generate 35 vehicle trips. This project is going to generate 81 vehicle trips.
So 250% more
Roughly, right, so the net increase is 46 over what was there. On a Saturday, the fine dining was generate 48 vehicle trips. That's going to go to 121, or it's going to a net increase of 73 vehicle trips. So it's a large, I mean, in terms of the percent increase, it's a large percent increase. That's why, as the applicant's looking at the driveways, similar to what's done at the Cracker Barrel restaurant down the street, is you can't make a left coming out of the driveway. The left turns would have to come out to the little 5 driveway, which has the distance to store the stacking that you need for the queuing that will take place during those peak time periods.
What about the queuing on Andover Street?
Andover Street has enough gaps for people to be able to turn, so it's not so much an Andover Street issue, it's any of the driveways or side streets, and then that relates to what goes on within the site in terms of how it impacts the queuing and ability to be able to get in and out of some of the parking spaces on the site.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of quick questions, probably maybe directed at you, Mr. Hammer. I didn't see a topography plan on, not in my packet anyways.
We were just going to do the traffic and then
Oh,
we'll
just
do
the
the rest.
traffic, I'm
So
sorry.
we have traffic
We'll
stuff,
get
we'll
back
do
to
traffic.
No, I guess I've had all of my questions asked by my colleague here. On traffic, I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do share my colleague's concerns about traffic, and I was wondering for specifically the exit onto Andover Street, one of the things that we saw, one of the previous applicants we were just chatting about they had a little concrete sort of median that almost forced the traffic to only go right. Is that something y'all considered there? Just because I know you can paint an arrow, but whether or not people actually listen to the arrow is a different question.
Well, it's something that could be considered, but if you put an island in and you have it be a raised island, the island needs to be a certain minimum size, and the driveway exit needs to be a certain minimum width, so the geometry would get bigger. And sometimes there's a negative with making the geometry bigger. It's less well-defined, and people tend to drive a little bit faster. An alternative might be to have flush channelization, like paint, like serrated concrete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had just so for informational, I think we had a similar issue at the urgent care. We started off with a raised one, and then fire came in and said, can you get rid of that? And they turned it into like the rumble strip.
Right.
So maybe, because if you run over one of the rumble strips, you're gonna notice you're going in the wrong place. So I don't know if that make more sense?
That is something we could certainly incorporate in.
All right.
Yeah, I think that would address my concerns there again, because if anybody actually does try to make a left here, it seems like it's going to rapidly become a problem. And traffic-wise, I think that was all my concerns on traffic.
All right, so, and I mentioned it the last time when we had the folks in, that important to me too, that we're keeping track of, because if, you can't control everybody from doing things they shouldn't do. You can alleviate the likelihood, but if you have habitual folks who are coming in and coming out and going left, that was trackable. That was one of the comments I had last time, that between the security folks that they have there and these cameras and whatnot, that can be addressed, which could prevent that person from being allowed to come in the future. I want that included in this because, if it's 1-2 common folks that just keep coming out and going left and ignoring every effort to stop them from doing so, we simply need to remove them from the equation. A random person, breaking the rules, you can only do so much. I mean, short of having somebody stand there, shaking their finger at you. I mean, you can't stop everybody from doing everything. But I think that those are that'll be important as an extra sort of belt and suspender issue for this.
I just wanted to add, at the last meeting, you had recommended a painted arrow as well, which was added to the plan on both of the exits.
Right, and the comment, and we had this on the other one, which is that the right turn only sign.
Yes.
And the arrow on the ground are to be kept in, good condition and upkeep in perpetuity, because I want to make sure that no one has the excuse, oh, I couldn't see that, it was worn away.
Right.
That kind of thing. Okay, so I think we're good with the traffic for now. So you guys want to do the rest?
I'll ask Mr. Hammond to just point out the changes that were made, but the changes are basically directed towards addressing the traffic issues, and, we've had the reduction of the setback of the building, we have the right turn only onto Andover Street, we have the increase of the width of the back driveway, all pretty much focused on the traffic analysis. Because, I think Mr. Graffio made clear, and I'm not sure if it was the first or second meeting, but, the intent is he understands the nature of the business, the importance to, have this function properly, and I think that came up at the time of discussion of these security monitors or safety monitors that would be out in the parking lot. And certainly any of the feedback that we're getting from the board tonight is, clearly the intent to incorporate that and have this function as it should, because he's a businessman, he's from town, and that's what the intent is.
So, Mr. Duffy, I do have plans that have the topographic information
Okay.
on them as well. They were submitted. There's a full plan set. It should be on sheet 4.
Yeah, I don't need to really see the plans, I just have a quick question regarding that, but
Okay.
when we get to it.
The change was that this little portion here of the exit was originally 20 feet wide. And this has always been 24 feet wide, this aisle. So we extended that to be 24 feet in width, added a couple hundred square feet of impervious pavement there. And then we ensured that that small change was going to be incorporated for the sizing of the subsurface infiltration system, which it has. We updated the stormwater report and the drainage calculations to reflect that. And the grading was minimal here in terms of its change related to the side slope in this particular area here. All of this remained untouched on this side of the access drive.
That's are we ready to have a discussion on that, Mr. Chairman?
Do you want to start? Well, let them get through the whole thing, and then we'll just go around the board, that way.
So there was that. We also added a proposed bike rack, which was suggested by Ms. Lauder. And we also further clarified this area here, which was originally a patio, to be a landscaped island, landscaped area here, so that the patio was completely removed. And then obviously the building had been removed from the prior meeting. That reduced area impervious pavement has been updated in the stormwater report as well.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at the retaining wall on the left side of the lot there off of Andover Street. But my actually next to the next door parking lot. I realize that your parcel is sort of in a little bowl there, for lack of a better word. And, but it seemed like that there was a pretty, somewhat of an elevation change between the other side of that lot and the lot next door. And if I'm just kind of guessing from a drive-by, something like 3 or 4 feet anyways. And I was wondering if is there any kind of a berm or buffer or something planned for that right side, just to kind of stabilize a berm and to maybe provide, I'm not saying you're gonna put 8-foot arborvitaes in there, but, you know, something to, you know, just sort of separate the lot from the lot from the building to the right.
So what's existing there now obviously isn't going to be what's proposed. So what happens is that this area gets built up in order to have the proper cover for the subsurface infiltration system was the main factor of this parking area and this little area being built up. So there's going to be a wall to hold back the earth here from extending towards the abutter.
Okay.
And then there's a full landscaping plan that's been reviewed prior that has landscaping throughout the entire site related.
Okay, so just give me a quick rundown on what you have planned for the right side lot line there.
Along here,
Yes,
there's a swale right here.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's gonna be landscaping in this area.
Could you grab the mic?
Yep. So there's a drainage swale here. And there's gonna be landscaping in this area here. There's an extension of the decorative wall that runs along the roadway. And then there's some landscaping in here and landscaping up in this area here.
Okay, to the left of the road, of the driveway going out, what about on the other side, like basically right along the right lot line is the.
When you say
I know it's
right,
all
do
swale, you're
you mean
saying?
this here?
Right along the right side lot line, right there.
Yes, this is a landscape swale.
Okay,
It's not for trees, it's just for small growth landscaping in that area. And then what happens here is this actually goes up in grade.
yeah, well, that's what I had said, 3 or 4 feet or something, right?
Oh, it actually is 6 feet in
Okay.
grade elevation. So
Okay.
when you look at the site now, the slope comes down, you know, as a embankment
Yeah,
coming off of the ATM side.
yeah.
And then that drainage that comes off of here gets picked up by that swale.
Okay, and where's that drain to?
That area drains down into this area here. There's a swale here. There's a culvert system that goes underneath the drive.
Okay,
And then it continues along the edge of the property line down to this low area here.
okay, understood. And what about, is there any chance of getting some taller plantings in the raised right side elevation there to sort of separate it from the next door, from the buildings next door? It was my original question.
Yeah. So even when you go over, you're talking about the view from here, from this area in here?
Basically to the right side of the swale, between the right side of the swale and the lot line.
In here.
Yeah, yeah, right there.
So we could put some plantings in here, I think. There's a lease agreement with Lowell 5 that we have
Okay.
for the ATM, but I don't see that there would be a problem, I don't think, to add some,
All I'm thinking of is that.
couple evergreens in here.
I'm just thinking that there'd be a little bit of separation, because obviously there are people that are here for, you know, that, I realize that the preschool isn't a school, and we've already dealt with that, but still, it would provide a little bit of kind of like separation of uses there in a way, I guess. for lack
Yeah,
of a better
when you
word.
brought that up at the first hearing, I went back and took a look at the grades, and actually, the grade here is approximately 10 feet higher
Okay,
than the grade is down here,
Yeah.
so there's quite a drop in
Sure, and I know,
the
right?
grade, right? So even if there were some, any kind of plantings along here at all would greatly affect that, because the building's down lower from the
Right.
view.
right.
Yeah,
So you're hoping that all of that water is going to go into the swale, because otherwise you're going to have a pretty substantial flow of water coming down the impervious area there towards Andover Street, correct?
well, the water that comes off the impervious area here gets put into an underground subsurface infiltration system. The swale systems here just take surface runoff from these small areas in here.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Any other questions related to the site while I'm here?
Do you have anything else, Mr. Duffy?
I think I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rosati?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, maybe pulling just on a very similar thread. I know kind of when y'all came here before the last meeting, one of the things that I was happy to hear you say was that you had revised some of the landscape plans, to help the site fit in more in harmony with the surrounding area. I haven't seen any revised landscape plans in any of these packets. I know we were kind of just chatting specifically about the right side property line. That is also the one that I am concerned about.
So the original landscape plan has been approved by the planning board, which is on file. The only additional landscaping that's been provided was to simply change this patio to a grassed area. That's the only change in the landscape area that's been proposed related to this project. In relation to what Mr. Duffy is asking for, that could be added in as a condition to add some evergreens in this area here to help with the screening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that would be something that I would want to see in these plans. And even looking at your renderings there, it kind of almost looks like it's a foresty mountain behind it. And I don't know, is that an accurate reflection of what's behind it? It looks
The rendering is not a true representation of the.
That's what I thought.
It's just to give it a little perspective instead of it showing up as an endless plain in the background. It's to give it a little definition.
And then I think my only other question I had, there's no signage plan here, so I'm assuming kind of at a later point, you all will come before us with a signage plan?
Yes, we will.
Similar questions about the, again, harmony with the surrounding area.
Yeah, we would come in for a sign for the proposed sign location, which is here, which will be in similar design as the monument style signage to complement the other signage that's along the existing businesses, which have been part of this project over time. We have put in some signage related to the stop sign, the right turn only signs. We would come in with signage that would be be proposed on the building itself and any additional signage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Champa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at the waivers you're going to be requesting, assuming these are still current, they are dated from a few days ago. You do not have continuous curbing throughout the site. I just wanted to know, could you point out the areas on the site plan that do not have curbing, and just give me some background on why they do not? I'm sure it's related to stormwater or drainage or plantings or something, but I just want you to walk me through.
Sure. The site does have curbing. The curbing, when you do the entrance drives, will all be vertical granite curbing. Here. And here. All of the interior curbing in here will be Cape Cod berm. And then where you have the
I'm sorry, what exactly is?
Cape Cod berm? It's a bituminous black curbing material that has an arch to it.
Kind of like a speed bump?
No, it defines the edge of the parking areas with a curbing, which is black pavement. It extends 6 feet above the grade of the
6 inches.
6 inches, excuse me. So it extends 6 inches above the paved parking area to define the parking area, to give it some separation from the landscaped area that's adjacent to.
Okay, so there is still definition, it's just not granite curbing?
That's correct.
Okay.
There is granite curbing, though, directly against the sidewalk to the building itself. That'll all be vertical granite curbing in here.
Okay, and then the other, one of the other waivers, well, the only one that's really relevant for tonight is no paved parking area may be within 20 feet of a right-of-way. Which, is that almost all of your parking along the Lowell 5 driveway there? Which parking do you require the waiver for?
Well, that's actually, we've added dimensions to show what those distances are. It's the distance from the edge of the pavement to the parking area to the lot line right-of-way. But we provided the distance of what it is from the pavement to the pavement on the street, which in this case is 21.9. And then over here, it's 25.6 feet from the pavement to the pavement. The regulation stipulates it's supposed to be 20 feet from the right-of-way, which is this dark line here, which is the property line. And the pavement that was shown here was the pavement that was previously approved for the prior permit.
So you're compliant with the real lines, not compliant with the imaginary line that nobody can see.
It's just the way that the regulation's set up.
And it's consistent with the approval by the board for the special permit that's of record and still in force and effect. So nothing's changed from the approved special permit.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I'm all set right now. Anything else?
No, I think that's it, Mr. Chairman, relative to the presentation tonight. We feel that we've addressed the issues. There might be the only issue here tonight that I've heard that is not specifically addressed, may be the landscape issue. But, at that point, this is what we're looking to present tonight and turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anybody in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns?
My name is Marie Luciano. I'm at 41 Deering Drive. One of the changes that you proposed was a wider driveway going out to that back road, correct? Is that what you were proposing to alleviate traffic issues?
So somebody can answer it.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's correct. So it's going out to International Place?
No, that's, the International Place is further back.
Okay,
Behind the Lowell 5 headquarters.
okay.
We're not doing anything back
So
there.
that driveway goes into the Lowell 5 headquarters? And this is all approved by them? That it's not going to alleviate traffic from 133 from Andover Street?
Maybe that's the confusion. This is meant to alleviate the potential queuing of cars in the inner site, which could throw off traffic elsewhere. And I see our consultant nodding his head. It's so that they can go out the back, come out that other way, so that you aren't jamming up cars trying to come in the inn. That way, things don't back up on 133. So I guess, without putting words in anybody's mouth, if I am, fix it for me. But the idea being that by doing that, you're addressing traffic. It's not the fact that they're going out the back that changes. It's the fact that they're not getting in the way of the cars trying to come in. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the issue was with the 20-foot width, because of we talked about the fact that the intensity is changing of the use. And so with more traffic trying to get in and out of the site, more traffic is now going to come out the backside rather than the front side. If you get a chance to look at the site plan, that driveway to the Lowell 5 driveway is a dogleg. It's a hard 90-degree turn. So if that driveway is narrow as it was before with 20 feet, even in a passenger car, if we have more cars trying to get in and out there, you'd have to, essentially, if you stripe the center line, you'd have to cross the center line to make your 90-degree turn to get lined up. Providing the width keeps the cars on the proper side of the center line, because it acknowledges that we may have queuing on the driveway, so we need to have the ability of two cars, one to enter and one to exit, and not having them cross paths. So widening it allows for that maneuver to take place because it's a tight 90-degree turn.
So the trips in won't be diminished.
It's not going to reduce the amount of traffic. What it's doing is accommodating the additional increase in traffic and making sure that both driveways can function with vehicles entering and exiting that doesn't cause backups onto either the driveway or the side street where, you know, if you have that situation where you can't make the turn in because the cars trying to get out is occupying the space you need, what this does is it alleviates that. So then you can make your turn. So if you want to go in there, you don't have to sit on the Andover Street waiting for the car to exit, or in this case, the Lowell 5 driveway. That car can wait and you can make your turn and you don't cross paths. That's all it's doing.
Okay, I don't think it's going to help, in my opinion. Our traffic issue is horrendous already on Andover Street, so I just want you to consider, the planning board, I want you to consider that, because it is horrendous. Trips, figures, facts, we see it every day. We can't get out of our street, and this is especially going to provide all kinds of problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Judith Jadis. I live at 55 Deering Drive. I'd like to address the same thing that Marie did. When you go,
You got to take the mic with you.
when you go out the back of the parking lot and you're heading towards the bank, okay? Then you're going to have a choice.
Why don't we do this? Take the microphone. And then bring it over to what you're talking about, right over here on the map. Might make it easier for
I
everybody.
don't know if I know his,
That's the back driveway.
Lowell 5 driveway, here's the Andover Street here.
okay, so once you go onto this road, you're either going to go down here and you're going onto Andover Street again. That's helping the business, but it isn't helping the people that are traveling Andover Street.
All right, so again, I think if I understood it again correctly, it's not that, it's the fact that by not jamming up the entrance, by allowing cars to be able to come out the back, it's meant to address not having cars back up on 133.
And I understand that, but I live off of Andover Street, and I'm concerned about the traffic on Andover Street. I'm not concerned about traffic going in and out.
Maybe I
of
misunderstood, maybe I didn't say it correctly. If the entrance is blocked up because cars are not able to go out the back, cars will back up on 133 because they can't get into the business. So the reason that our consultant was suggesting this was to try to alleviate the likelihood of that.
I understand it completely, but is Deering Drive on here?
No.
But, okay, we're over here. Okay, right about here.
So the Giles Force Industries,
Yeah,
and this is the ATM.
okay,
Deering Drive's here.
yeah, but it's down here. Okay. So my whole concern is traffic on Andover Street, okay? All right, so they have alleviated the traffic here, right? We can turn in. We come out, these people are coming out, they come down onto Andover Street. Right here, we have an extra lane also. Those cars are going to try to come out onto Andover Street. If they don't go that way, I guess they will go up this way. I guess the bank is allowing them to do that. They get onto International Drive. Now, one time this year, there was construction on North Street. You had to go down International Drive. When you got to the end of International Drive, you couldn't get out onto Andover Street because the lights couldn't handle the traffic. It was a constant stream coming from Andover or coming off the highway. So the only way you could get there is if you went through a red light if you wanted to go up to Deering Drive. So it helps the business, it doesn't help the traffic on Andover Street, and that's my main concern. As far as no right turn, no left turn when you come out, there's been a sign there right along. And, you know, if I'm a U Lowell student and I go in and I buy my brownies or gummies or whatever, I come out, do you think I'm going to stop and not go to the left? I have to get to my class at U Lowell. So these right turns mean absolutely nothing. The other thing is, and I brought this up the last time, the town has put a lot of money into the development of sidewalks in that area. And I think that's great for families. I think it's great for young people. But I don't think it's great that the thing they're going to walk to is a cannabis distributor. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. So, and in fact, if you've been on this street recently, they have put up great signs for pedestrians. So that's my reason. I live on Deering Drive. According to the Mass DOT, in 2022, we had over 15,000 cars. So I don't think we need one more, never mind hundreds more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Good evening. My name is Shannon Doherty. I am here representing the Learning Experience. Talking about traffic, just a few things. I can tell you at 3:30 this afternoon, as I spent the entire day at the Learning Experience in Tewksbury today. At 3:30, when we went outside to get the children off the bus, there was constant traffic, nonstop going. At 4:40, when I went to leave the Learning Experience, I actually couldn't even turn out onto 133 Andover Street, regardless if I was going right or left. So I personally ended up going through the Lowell 5 because I was already sitting there for about 7 minutes. Concerns with the traffic. When we went to the neighborhood meeting the night before this meeting, I know I had asked a few different questions. The first one was regarding people exiting using the same driveway we use, and we were told no, that would not happen. I had asked about people evacuating through either our driveway or towards Lowell 5, because that is our contingency plan, that is our emergency exit. That is where if we were to have a fire, some type of disaster, and we had to evacuate, we would go with 100+ children that way. So now there's the concern of that additional traffic as well exiting that way. At that neighborhood meeting the night before this meeting, I had also been told when we talked about landscaping specifically, you're saying there's a large dip. We actually forgot our photos, but there is no longer a large dip. There was a large dip. There is no longer a large dip. You can stand on our property and see almost straight across. but we were told there would be trees that would line the area you kept asking about, Mr. Duffy, that would be nice and high to give us that nice line to kind of block that. But now we're told that that wouldn't be the situation. That wouldn't be the case. There would be greens. We all know greens can be shrubbery, bushes, plants, flowers. That is not going to give us any type of line. The concern for me always comes back to just the safety. If we need to talk about traffic, I had mentioned this last time with the several towns around us that are banned from having cannabis: Andover, North Andover, Reading, North Reading, Wilmington, Methuen, Lawrence. That is going to bring in a lot more traffic since those are all surrounding towns. The additional concern for me is, even if it is, you have an attendant out front directing the traffic, and they are sending them either out the front or the back, regardless, if that person does not want to take that right turn out, they can loop right around again through the Lowell 5, come down our driveway to take the left. So again, it comes down to the case of safety for our children. We're getting children on and off the bus. And we just want to make sure we are providing the safest environment. We all know we do not categorize as a school under the regulation number. Hopefully that will be something that will change in the future, but we have to just look at now and how we can protect the children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, or concerns?
Michelle Stella, 80 Polly's Place. I don't want to be redundant. A lot of my notes are things I said the last time I was here. Many of my concerns are more appropriately addressed with the select board, so that will happen. Regarding the traffic, I just want to add, we're forgetting New Hampshire folks coming up the road that'll swing off on the highway. It's right off the highway. I know that's great for business. It's not great for us. Again, we're a residential community directly across the street from where this building is being proposed. And I'm hoping that you received the video that my neighbor sent. There was a video of the traffic around 4 o'clock, would you say, Alex? If anyone wants to see it, he's got it in his phone. I think he emailed it to you. I hope at some point, maybe you, if you haven't already, or if you don't live on that side of Tewksbury, that you can take a drive and see what the traffic is actually like. I just want to bring it a little closer to home. Again, being directly across the street, one of my concerns, we're talking about turnarounds, would be Polly's Place. We already deal with traffic that comes off 133 and turns into Polly Place, and we're a nice, beautiful U-turn. Being right across the street, I don't see how we won't deal with plenty of that. We have children that live there. It's not safe for cars to be coming in there and turning around there. And I don't think I have anything else in this whole long thing that hasn't really already been addressed. Other than I just want to again point, people disregard those arrows, the right lanes, the left lane turns, all that's already going on there is already disregarded, some from confusion and some from just blatant disregard. And I'll just remind everyone, finally, final note, that we do have upcoming the townhomes that are just up the road on the corner of North Street across from Daring. They're not filled yet. And even much more concerning is the 130 apartments over at the Extended Stay Hotel, the Residence Inn, that's being converted. That's 130 apartments. I don't know how many people that means are going to live there, but that's a lot of cars. It's a lot of cars, it's a lot of activity, it's a lot of residential space that just happens to collide with commercial space. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Hi, June Wojcik, 78 Deering Drive. And I just, addressing the traffic again, it seems like on the one hand, there are reports that have been given that say that traffic isn't going to be impacted that much, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But then, on the other hand, there are all these things that are being done to mitigate an increase in traffic. And I don't think that any business person would have a location, choose this location, unless they expected a very good business to be done. They're there to make money. And so if you're not going to have an increase in traffic, why would you be there? That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, and as far as businesses go, I have heard at other meetings too, the concerns of the daycare center there, the learning center, and concerns they have about continuing there if this comes in. And
Sorry, I missed that. If the concerns about what?
staying there.
Oh.
If this comes in. And given the two, for our community, for our neighborhood that we have there, I would much rather see the learning center stay there than have this store come in. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? All right. So, I mean, nope, slid it under the wire.
I'll be brief, I won't be repetitive. My name's Alex Pratt, I live at 125 Polly's Place. I took some video the other day of traffic on 133, and I did send it to several of you, I believe. I also sent it to, I hope, the select board. It will show traffic backed up, heading towards Lowell at a standstill. It will show some cars basically going by at 30 miles an hour, heading towards Andover. And that pretty much happens every weekday afternoon. So I have to say to you that the idea to mitigate by putting in a wider exit at the back of your parking lot makes no sense. The cars are still going to come out of that. They're still going to go around in 133. They're still going to try to turn left. So I really think, I guess there's a question of common sense. There is another site in town which was proposed to do the cannabis shop or a cannabis shop. There was no residential opposition. There's clearly residential opposition here. There's clearly a traffic problem here with what's going on 133 today. Tomorrow at the select board, if it takes place, we will talk about police activity. But that's not for tonight. What I will tell you is, this makes no sense. The other site makes more sense. The other site has a building that's already built. So I don't know why we persist in trying to put this particular business in this place. That's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right. Anyone else? Only once, twice? All right. Okay. Do you guys have anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to pick up on, I think someone was asking a concern about consuming cannabis at the site. I thought
I don't know if
that's
I heard
right.
that. I don't think
Just, it's going to be regulated and that won't happen. And yes, we understand that an empty site doesn't generate traffic, and there will be traffic here. This is a site that's been designated by the town as a potential site for this type of business. So we're trying to work and present to the town and meet all questions that are raised and address all issues. Specific to this situation here, we're here for site plan review. A couple of matters that have come up tonight that we certainly want to address to the satisfaction of the board. One of them being details on landscaping. What we'd like to do is present, taking the information we have here tonight, and present a more detailed landscape plan. There was also the issue or question relative to that right turn onto 133, and the question, how do you make it more certain that they're going to follow, and we talked about the serrated concrete and things of that sort. So we can do some additional changes to the plan as presented to take in the information that you've presented to us tonight, and with the intent that we're going to address all the issues to the best that we can And I think that this will be a situation that once we address all these points, that we will look for the support of the board for a site plan review approval. But what we would ask for tonight is to push it out to the next meeting so that we can address some of the concerns that came here tonight and provide this additional information for the board for the next meeting.
All right, but my only confusion is, isn't the deadline for going to the select board for tomorrow night's meeting for this?
Their public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow evening at the select board, yes.
So you want those to be contingent things to deal with then, not pushed off to the next meeting? Because if you push them off to the next meeting, you miss tomorrow night.
So not necessarily. So the way the select board has structured the decision-making process for this license is that they are going to have their first hearing tomorrow evening, and the intention is to have a third meeting in March
So
to
they
be
can-
able.
All right, so it doesn't
Right.
jack.
We
okay,
would have
then
the
that's-
ability to get this information to the board to make certain we try to address every issue
All right, so we don't
that you
have to
brought
be
up.
done before they start their process.
Not necessarily.
Or they're
They
done
just,
with their process.
correct, they can't issue a license unless a site plan approval has been received,
That's
correct?
fine, okay, yeah, so if you want to redo the plans and show, more trees or whatever it is, that doesn't screw up the swale, obviously along the area that Mr. Duffy was talking about, the rumble strip or whatever, and that's fine. Was that, those are the only two, right?
I think those are the two biggest issues that we saw here tonight from my notes. And afterwards, we'll, get together and make certain if anyone else has notes with other issues that,
I mean, I'm in favor of the trees, if we can find the trees and whatnot, because, I'm all for making sure that both sides of, neighboring properties are happy with the, the landscaping as it is. I am somewhat concerned with the implication that, this is a legal business. We seem to be confused by that a little bit here. This is not an illegal business. So asking for the landscape, because you'd like there to be landscaping, that's fine. But the implication of we don't want to be looking at that. You're looking at a retail business. That means, what else are you looking at? It's just a building. So these implications that we're talking about someone on the corner, standing there is sort of concerning to me because, I'm all for, you want to put landscaping in because you want to make good neighbors, because you can't see them. That's fine, but for that reason, not because there's something wrong with the business. I mean, the town approved this. The town cited this area as a place for this. And while I understand there are residents, this is also a commercial area, which is not new. So I suspect that people were aware that they live where there's also a commercial area. It's not all residential. So, I mean, those things have to be taken into consideration, as do the traffic. Well, I mean, there is a balancing act for any business that, the idea is not to have unsuccessful businesses start operating who don't bring anyone there. I mean, that, we didn't make that argument with Java Hut, which is also there. I mean, you expect people to show up to have their coffee. There's going to be people who do that. I mean, that's part of the traffic and the back and forth between having businesses in town or having no businesses in town. So, we have to try to address that in the best way we can. If it can't be addressed, it can't be addressed. But if it can, that's the whole point, is to find the medium between those things for any business, whether it's this business, Java Hut, a daycare. I mean, the fact that there's an emergency plan that might go out the back through Lowell 5, I suspect that if any business moves in there and there's an emergency, any traffic that business has may or may not get in the way of that emergency plan. I would hope that would have been accounted for in an emergency plan, the fact that there may be a business there, because it's a lot on which a business could go. So, I mean, to say that is, it's like, it's the only, you say that and then that means don't do anything there. I have a hard time with that. So, we have to, and, also in this, we have a little bit of a unique situation. We're not doing a site plan approval here. A special, sorry.
Not site plan, special
Not
permit.
site plan, we're not doing a special permit for this. because the select board also gets a bite at this apple. So some of these issues may be better addressed with them and not us this time, because they have the ultimate final decision on this. You know, someone referenced a different spot that put one of these forward. We went over that. We seemed satisfied with that site. The select board wasn't. That's up to the, you know what I mean, that's up to their part of the decision-making. So just because we're done with it does not necessarily mean they're going to agree with what we do, but we can only deal with what's in front of us. They have different considerations that they can make. So those are my thoughts anyways. Anyone else with anything to add tonight, Mr. Duffy?
I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, and, you know, I hear the complaints about traffic everywhere in Tewksbury. We live in a town that has a lot of traffic. Has a lot more traffic than it had 39 years ago when I moved here. Not everybody is going to Hot Shop. I drive through, all the way through Billerica from Tewksbury to get on Route 3. I drive through Tingsboro and Dunstable to get to go visit family in Pepperell. I don't want to see another lot in Tewksbury that we have to drive by that's just a ugly vacant lot sitting there. I think of preferred distributors. I think there's a lot of issues going on with driving and traffic. One of them is drivers are not very courteous. I mean, I know that's not, you know, it's a little bit of off topic there, but you know, I think everybody needs to like kind of learn how to drive better in a highly trafficked area, like you would if you were going to Malden or Boston or whatever. It's different. We live in an area that people want to live in. Tewksbury's a wonderful town, and I would like to see that lot developed appropriately with the appropriate safeguards. I think if the applicant's willing to, you know, you know, install some kind of a buffer of landscaping, if we can amend the original landscape plan, if that's acceptable, I would be okay with moving forward with this.
So, Lasati, anything to add?
No.
Mr. Champa?
Yeah, just a few things. So one thing is, you know, I'm looking at your entry and access from the site, and, you know, I think what I'd like to see, so we are talking about a 250% increase in trips because of this usage versus a lower usage, which would be the restaurant. I don't know what the lowest usage approved use of this site is. I don't know what the highest is, but a 250% increase has obviously caught a lot of attention from the neighbors. So what I'd like to see, or what I think I would like to see that could alleviate their concerns and therefore help us move this along much better, is maybe show on the drawing or maybe more of a larger site plan, peak anticipated queuing. How many people, how many cars would be on the Lowell 5 Drive? That's also where the ATM is coming out. Are your customers going to be blocking people from getting out from the ATM? And then similarly from your internal driveway, how many people would be queued up during peak time? I know that probably requires some guesswork on your part as far as what percentage would be on Lowell 5 Drive versus your own internal driveway. And then, you know, find out, I know we heard from Learning Center, their bus drop-offs, parent drop-offs. Maybe dig into that a little bit. Maybe we can get away with a restriction that if their time doesn't interfere with one of your busier times, that you block that access between certain hours, something like that, so that they have free access for parents coming in, dropping off, buses getting in and out, things of that nature. Just try to avoid, you know, basically two different uses competing for the same time. And then I think this one should be an easy one, but I think looking at this, it should be fairly easy to demonstrate that nobody leaving your site directly is going to be taking a U-turn through Pauline Place, because they're already past Pauline Place, going back towards 495. I guess it is conceivable that from Lowell 5 Drive, if they were to take a right, they could also try to take a quick left. That's probably more dangerous than just waiting for the right time to try and take a left. But I think you could probably demonstrate that with a simple graphic, that it's not likely, or highly unlikely even, that any of your customers would be looking to take a U-turn on Pauline Place. And so we can put that argument to bed. So that was pretty much my thought. I just think if we could show some of the queuing, how it interacts with other customers and other businesses on the site, and then, you know, alleviate some of the concerns with the neighbors, hopefully we can, you know, we can get through this at the next meeting.
So, Mr. Champ, it was an interesting kind of thought. I don't know in practice whether some of it would work as far as with the neighbors, but I don't think it's a bad idea to at least have conversations with the Learning Center about some of their busier time in terms of, you know, the bus drop-off and that kind of thing, so that you could then convey that information to your parking attendants, maybe not so much shutting the entire driveway down, because that might cause a problem that you don't want to out on, you know, 133, but where maybe they could be over in that area to try to slow down cars coming out, perhaps, maybe hold them up a little to make sure that they're not screwing up the bus drop-off or something like that. I mean, it's not like it's 90 buses coming through, you know what I mean? This isn't the elementary school, you know, sending everybody back to, you know, the entire town from one site, you know? So, I mean, it's probably something you could work with, but, you know, I mean, it's a little bit more of a good neighbor thing necessarily than something we can, you know, put into a special permit, I suppose. But, you know, but something that's not the worst idea in terms of just coordination, you know, and having it, you know, built into your, you know, your advisory to your parking staff to say, hey, between 3:30, I think I heard 3:30, but, you know, around 3:30, we need you at that other end to make sure you're not screwing up, you know, we're not screwing up the buses coming in or out or something like that. You know, something as simple as that, or just be aware, you know, this is the time where the most cars are coming through for student, for child pickup. You know what I mean? You know, just that's not, I mean, that's important. You want to know that anyways, I think. But I think Mr. Champa's point is correct, that, you know, you got to understand who you're next to, right? I mean, so it's not a morning issue because you guys aren't open. This is one half of your day, you know, that you're dealing with. You need to deal with the afternoon to the point at which they're done. So, you know, I don't think it's an onerous, you know, consideration. Does that make sense?
I think that would go a long way towards helping all of this work for everybody in that area.
No, I
I mean,
think
you don't have
that's,
to answer now, just, you know, like, maybe come back with just a little, you know, a little write-up or something that, you know, explains, you know, how that can be coordinated, and, you know, how you, again, it just goes to the mitigation of it. You know, it's not the kind of mitigation that you see, you know, like the rumble strip or something, but, you know, I
So
think it is a
incorporating the
recommendation.
business into the area, which, you know, again, I think very important, some of the threshold issues we're addressing here tonight, though, a business is going to generate traffic, because otherwise, what's the sense? And it is a commercial area. You know,
Which
I
is the
mean,
reason
going
for
to
the
Mr.
mitigation.
Duffy's point, I grew up in Andover Street. I've lived within a mile of this area for 63 years. So if someone wants to know the chronology of development of 133, I can get in this, you know, I understand it.
It's even a street with your name on it.
Oh, even a street with my name on it. But, you know, but I understand because, and it is a great town. I had a wonderful time growing up as a kid here. I raised my family here because they're wonderful people in the town of Tewksbury. But we're in a great location. It's a business area, and Mr. Graffio is a businessman in town right now. And there's a lot of us here that have the same feeling about Tewksbury. We love the town. So certainly we're going to work with the board, take all your suggestions, and would appreciate the ability to come back at the next meeting and hopefully wrap this thing up.
All right, I have 7:30, right? 7:30? So do we have a motion to continue this till 7:30 at our next meeting? Motion made, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we see you guys
Mr.
next
Chairman,
time.
what was that date again?
7:30 on the
26th.
26th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to agenda item K, which is also, that's 1695 Shawshene Street. The applicant has requested to be continued to our next meeting. We have them penciled in for 7:25. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. I'm sorry, just before you head out, my guess is we're probably going to look maybe to have you here for the next one too, all right? All right, so with that, we move on to correspondence. I didn't see no correspondence, right? No?
Or a video. Did anybody get a video?
I didn't get a
I didn't get a video.
No. I mean, I've gone up there and looked at the traffic, so I could use the video, but I don't need it, so. All right, that brings us.
visual.
Yeah.
Too large to transmit. I didn't receive anything either.
All right, you might have sent it to the select board, too. That brings us to other business not known at the time of the posting of the agenda. Is there any such business?
None.
No. All right, that brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good evening.